How's it going, everyone? Welcome, Eulier Gonzalez. And today, let's take a look now at the EC2 instance offerings. Take notes out of that, and then move on to the EBS, which is Elastic Block Store, which is another service that it is part of the AWS offering. And then dive deep into the other uh, services. But all of this is starting to make sense because it all starts with the EC2 instance, in particular is on the infrastructure. So the TLDR of this, or the too long didn't read, is that Amazon, it started in 2002 where they developed these internal tools in 2003 they now realize what is the business deal, infrastructure as a service. So this is why first we look at the infrastructure here at the anatomy, like hey, what is this regions, what is the available zone, what is this edge locations or point of presence, all right, that uh, with the rise of computing on the cloud and the convenience for a lot of business that they have now is their IT services hosted into these specialized cloud vendors, Azure, Google Cloud, and Amazon, just to name a few one. So the promise is that Amazon is going to focus exclusively to hire the best talent to provide a best experience for hosting applications, right? So not only web servers, but for any other app that your business might need, right? So data analysts or a database or some gateways or some machines that distribute the load of your traffic, just to mention a couple ones. And that is interesting because in 2004, I think, they launched now at least the SQS, which is simple queue service, and then in 2004, 2005, now they expanded this offering, so EC2 and S3. So with that, right, and then in 2007 they expand to other geographies like Europe, right? But the whole point of this is that this infrastructure that they now see as their business core is something that, as we explore the anatomy, so for example, is the regions, as I mentioned before, is that you can now select several of these offerings or services, uh, and there now is some sort of conditions or rules that you might follow when you want to pick one or several of them. So, but the thing here is that this AWS service, region, sorry, uh, that you can choose based on your admin dashboard and the availability zones that most of the times, or that it is physical locations, that usually you have at least minimum three, and you can have up to seven. So things like Sao Paulo or LA, Chicago, Miami. I think in Miami they have one. Oregon. Uh, was the other place? In Europe as well, in Middle East, Southeast Asia. So all of this owns now at least three data centers where they are highly connected. That guarantee is they're highly connected with high internet speed with low latency. So you can now choose one of these huge offering, these spaghetti services. Uh, but there are certain conditions. So, hey, is that service available in my zone? Is that service close to my users? Is that server following the compliance? Uh, what is the cost of that service because it varies across regions? And so all of this is just part of the AWS offering per AC or availability zone. And then we're also going to look at what is the point of presence, which is like third-party vendors or contract that they have, so they offering their services through them. But the whole point of this is the infrastructure is the core business. And then, as we explore about the admin dashboard and the global services, that this is more like an exception rather than the rule, like I am Identity Access Manager and S3 or Route 53, as well as Windows the firewall, right? Among others, right? Uh, One of them is the EC2. One of them is the IAM. So IAM, the TLDR is that, hey, I am going to provide you a service and an entry place, all right, for your as AWS admin administrator to now um, manage the company assets. So particularly is the access of your the access the access of your services. So here in the IM, so now you have now several concepts or the anatomy, as I like to call, which is the uh, users, the groups, and the roles. So users are now your physical users that you provide now certain policies, the same as groups, but groups are more Ethereum, so they just there you can have several users on those groups, but you can have groups onto another groups. And this policy, which is follow a JSON object that describe is the policy version, the optional ID, and the series of statements that say, hey, this service is allowed or not, or this principle, aka the user, the roles, or the groups, is allowed or not via the effect to access through all of these research and what actions they can do, right? I think that's very, very interesting. Then you can take a look at the JSON uh, for more details. And then as we explore how to set up a users, what is the series of steps that happens there, and how you can now or the two strategy to actually secure the access for your users, whether it's enforce a strong security policy, uh, which hey set a fixed length password, so adds multi characters or among other features, right? And the other is the MFA, multi-factor authentication. Whether this is virtual through the application, so like Google or Microsoft authenticators, I'm particularly using is Aegis and or this UTF, this universal second factor, which is a hardware key that I prefer to use. And for more advanced cases like, hey, now you need to provide security for C-level suits or the CEOs or even the governments, right? Now they have these two options for it's known as a key fob, right? This is a specialized hardware that generates a token uh, on the hardware that you can now put in and access to that, right? So this is very interesting in terms of security because some of this stuff I'm going to use that for my own theme. So that's great. And then um, I also look at how can I access to AWS? What is the different entry points? Whether it's the through the web admin dashboard or the CLI or the SDK. And in these last two cases, we need to have an access key that is now generated for us. And actually, I look at how to get that access key. And uh, then how you can now is add some users to or have some policies to your groups and also the roles here. So unlike user, which is now physical person that you provide now policies, now roles are the AWS services that you provide now these policies. I also look at how to do that. And when it comes to manage when was the last time your user access if they have MFA setup or if they change the password, when was the last time to change their password? All of this you can look at the credentials report. And if you want to know uh, which servers were accessed by who, you can look at that as the accessor or the last pass, which is something they changed recently. Uh, that's great, right? This is the huge overview of IM as a service, and yeah, that pretty much that's it, man. Pretty much that's it. Pretty much. Let me see. Yeah, pretty much that's it, right? Uh, and well, and some and always and emphasizing this. And what is the responsibility or the shared responsibility model for the AWS and you as an admin or as a admin infrastructure, right? So AWS is taking care of the security updates and patches and uh, make their so improve their servers and fix bugs, their services. Whereas now the how do you call it? Jesus. The so your role as as a AWS admin is just to make sure that you use your service under the TOS. Pretty simple. Okay, so then I look at this another service, which is part of the core of AWS offering, a EC2, and before that, look at how you can set up a budget through the billing and management dashboard, where you can set is several budget, whether it's zero budget or yeah, zero budget or monthly budget, daily, weekly, right? Uh, and then finally getting to the EC2, what EC2 stands for, which is Elastic Cloud Compute, which is a way of how you can rent now one of their services or their uh, yeah server, right, or computer, uh, where you can now host any applications, okay? And because there are um, there's a way of how you can create this. I also look at the different type of EC2 instance and what are the specific use cases, right? So hey, I need is to have a set up a high performance web server, or I going to host some gaming applications, or uh, I'm going to set up a video processing app. So anything that require high CPU intense task. So you want now a compute optimized uh, EC2 instance, right? So you can think of this like buckets. Let me put it here. You can think of this like buckets. EC2 fundamentals. There you got it. Yeah, you can think of this like buckets, right? So what you have now, the general purpose, the compute optimize, and any time that you might need to do some database transactions or store some or or host an app that is doing all of this. Yeah, for example, all OTP or lab, which is a fancy way to say, hey, online transaction processing, okay, or online analytic processing. So in any case, it's like I do need to pull some data from a server or from a database, and therefore somehow do some data treatments here, okay? So to get some insight out of this huge amount of data and so on and so forth, right? So that's the one of the use cases, and I do want to explore this a little bit more. So it follows now a name convention, right? So anytime that you have, so the M is the instance class, then is the generation, and then you have is the size within the instance class, all right? And some of the comparison or the EC2 instance type. Remember, all of these are like buckets, all right? All of these are like buckets that you put now for specific use cases. So the general purpose is something that I already mentioned. This actually vary between T, T5, T or M, right? In this course, we'll be using is a T2, so that's the general purpose. But that's interesting because you can have here several of them. So Mac is using for that T and M. Anything that starts with T and M or even A. All right. So the compute optimize is for anything that I mentioned is like, hey, I do need a high performance computing or a high performance web server or any high demand applications, so media transcoding or batch processing workloads, right? Machine learning and data analysis, or a dedicated game server. So here it stands for C. All right. So this is the convention. It starts with C. Okay, compute optimize. The memory optimize, right? Which is RAM optimize. It is fast performance for workloads that process large data sets in memory, right? So what are those? For example, is high performance relational or non-relational database. Hey, I do need is to host some in-memory database like Redis. Well, it's gonna use this like memory optimize or distribute web scale caches, which is another variation of this. Let's say you have well, they mentioned, yeah. So you do want to now have a series of routes ready to be delivered, and you store them in your cache, and then you now send over the cable. So you do want to have now a distribute web server across your regions, so you can serve the content quickly to your users. in-memory database optimized by business intelligence, something that I mentioned. I don't know what the by business intelligence means. Application performing real-time processing of big unstructured data. Okay, okay, okay. If you are now processing some real-time data of big unstructured data, that interesting. So, mm-hmm. Processing, when they call big unstructured data, it means is any uh, any data that doesn't have or doesn't follow any structure. And there's two type of data, right? You have the unstructured and the structured data. So structured data are like JSONs or tables, relational data. You know the shape before, right? But the other type is the video data or audio data, right? And this is just to mention a couple one. Uh, so anytime that you need to do this media transcoding or a dedicated server to process unstructured data or big unstructured data, if I look at big unstructured data, right? Example of unstructured data um, is communications and IoT. Um, no, wait a single moment. You might hallucinate that. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Exactly. Oh, it makes a lot of sense. So, so, unstructured data is often stored in file system, non-relational, non-relational, or NoSQL database, or in data lake. Unstructured data, but again, what is unstructured data? Unstructured data. Mm, 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 mm. Okay. Anyway. Anyway. So yeah. So what is unstructured data? So it is. It's information that does not have a predefined format. Unstructured data sets are massive, often terabytes or petabytes of data. What is the size of this? Petabytes, 10 power 15 bytes. Um, Real life example. All right. Facebook storing over 10 billion users' photos, or the U.S. Library Congress holding over 20 petabytes of data. God damn it. Next, Netflix stream require petabyte of data to deliver content to a millions of users. A daily petabyte could store roughly 11,000 4K movies, totally over 2.5 years of non-stopping video. God damn it. Okay, that's a good indicator. It's like, what is a terabyte or a petabyte? Because exactly, a petabyte is 1,000 terabytes. and that is allegedly, right, is 11,000. Jesus. 11,000. Imagine that you have now somehow a physical form to store data, right? And you have now 11,000 of them. 11,000 of 4K movie, totally over 2.5 years of non coding stuff. So, but in any case, this is what unstructured data is. And that is often terabytes or petabytes and contain 90% of all enterprise generated data. That's very interesting. According to IBM, right? Why do you have is this 1 and 2? Why do you have this 1 or 2? Natural processing. Yeah, but how can I look at that? Because you put that like, yeah, this is 1. It means like, what do you mean by 1? You know what I mean? What do you mean by 1? Untapped value. What every executive needs to know about unstructured data. IDC white paper, the untapped. Holy hell. IDC white paper, the untapped values on unstructured data. Holy, that's why we have a box here. Unstructured data, customer contract, product spec, employee handbook, and so much more makes up to 90% of your business data, according to IDC. While the content is often spread across systems and siloed, it is also full of untapped value. Check out exclusive research about unstructured data in box sponsor IDC white paper, untapped value. What every executive needs to know about unstructured data. So dive into the white paper to learn the massive impact of content sprawl on security and productivity, why undervalued unstructured data ends up costing you more, why undervaluing unstructured, and how generative AI help you unlock the value within your content. Beware with that. Take it easy. Take with a grain of salt. Box here. That's interesting. Content plus AI. Intelligent content management, secure collaboration, and automated workflow. Broadcom, Morgan Stanley. Oh, look at this. Broadcom, Morgan Stanley, and U.S. Air Force. The U.S. Air Force is using that? Holy hell. GLL and Airbnb. The French stuff. Right? Wexex, Movember Foundation, University Hall, Modern Health, Fundwell, Broadcom, AWS Global, Exact Science. Scotiabank. So, but this box is content management here. Who the fuck is this box? Who owns box? Oh, I see. I see. I see. I see. Cloud company box. I see. Okay. I see. Holy hell. Alright. Okay. Holy
fully subsumed and it sort of developed on the fly. Just
The Dracula has gone back a lot.
Ford or GM or JP Morgan, they have systems in there that have to run the same way every single day.
If box is what you get for working 9 to 9 7, just work 9 to 5.
Kind of get added on top to help make decisions.
Box has been stagnant. Box has been a stagnant cloud storage company for a while. Yet DC can get over their strange obsession with Atom Leaf.
The model that we've sort of backslid into is you're in a huge legacy corporation that's very sclerotic and slow, and then you just have a guy at a desk who's using ChatGPT for more and more of his job.
Okay. Yeah, I will take this with a grain of salt. There's nothing wrong with that. So so this is Box, bro. Okay. Yeah, it's a hosting application. Yeah, it's a host app. It's a hosting app. Okay, collaboration and file sharing tool for business. But I think Box was founded in 2005 by Aaron Levy and Dylan Smith. Initially, it focused on consumer, but around 2009 and 2010, Box pivoted to focus on business user. This is the nature. This is the nature of any business. Is that at especially in tech, is hey, initially I'm offering is this, and then down the line I don't know if this business model is still being relevant, and then I need to pivot here. So, but in any case, so this is what this is Box, bro. That is a very interesting. It's a hosting solution, cloud-based content management, and file sharing tool for business. Okay, that makes a lot of sense of why they use that. The founders relied on their own money as well as support from friends and family members until Mark Cuban invest 350K in seed funding in 2005. Holy hell with Mark Cuban, bro. Oh, my French toast with Mark Cuban, bro. It's a Shark Tank. Kelly School of Business and the Indiana University Blooming. Diverse business career that include founding MicroSolution and Broadcast.com, both of which he sold at substantial profit. Cuban investment spans various industries from technology and media to sport and entertainment. He has been a prominent figure in NBA, known for his active involvement with the Maverick, with which he won in 2011 NBA championship as owner, and dispute with the league's management. In his side venture, Cuban has been involved in philanthropy, political commentary, and reality televisions. Holy French toast, bro. Holy French toast, bro. Holy French toast, bro. Yeah, holy French toast, bro. Holy French toast, bro. Holy French toast, bro. Oh my god. That's interesting. So all of these are highly very connected. All right. Okay. That speak volumes. That speak volumes. So in any case, so this is Box, and I mention Box because it's a company that handling is content. Is a content management. When you talk about now content is any specific data, the content management solution and file sharing application. Initially start as a this is interesting because Mega Upload is also similar to this. Mega Upload is also similar to this, but they serve to different user needs. While Mega focusing on high capacity encrypted user controlled storage, Box offering secure, collaborative cloud storage tailored for business workflow. Mega is best for secure large file transfer, while Box excel in enterprise document management and collaboration. So the but again, both of them are which industry they belong. File hosting service or cyber locker, and Box to the file sharing in cloud content. While both were cloud storage, Mega Upload act as a public-facing, high-volume file service often associated with pirate content, whereas Box is a legitimate enterprise-focused business-to-business. Okay, no, but again, Mega Upload and Box both are on the same industry, which is hosting services. Cloud storage. Uh, Mega offer is solutions to users and encryption and file sharing for large data sets. But to users, uh, and now Box is for a business to business, right? It's on the business to business side. Okay. All right. But again, why am I mentioning this? Is because um, uh, this content management tool, right? Uh, where they describe that 90% of all enterprise generated data are unstructured data, and here I'm talking about is this data sets, or especially when you want to set up a server exclusively for managing is um, database operation, or when memory is required, right? Like RAM, okay, like RAM here, like RAM exactly. So in-memory database optimized for business or application performing real-time processing of unstructured data. So this unstructured data is driven by these diverse and extensive data sources, including text documents, all right, so PDF, for example, or any text documents, social media, image, and audio files, instant message, and smart devices. Almost all new data generated that today is unstructured. Every message sent, photo, uploaded, or sensor triggers adds to growing volume. And in the recent past, unstructured data was considered dark data. I'm assuming that, according to Gartner, dark data refers to the information asset organization collect, process, and store during regular business activity, but generally fail to use for other purpose, such as analytic, business relationship, and direct monetization. Now we are talking here. So most companies today store vast quantity of data in Splunk global research service, or more than 1,300 business and IT decision makers. 60% of the respondents reported that half of the more organization data is considered dark. that there is no business value there. So they store that information, but they don't use that for analytics or business relationship or monetization. A full one-third of respondents reported this amounts to be 75% or more. But again, and just mention this unstructured data, all right, which can be is this text document, image and audio file, or it also is video processing. So unstructured data complexity and non-uniform data structure also necessitate more sophisticated method of data analysis Technologies such as machine learning and natural language processing are commonly leveraged to extract insight from unstructured data. Which is, for example, if I upload this video to YouTube, which is I'm going to do that. This now it's so I'm going to upload that because this is an unstructured data, aka this you can represent here right now is the shape of this video or image, right? Uh, so this will be stored on a file system rather than in a database, and that makes a lot of sense why we do that. But the deal here is now that we have this specific technique for data analysis like machine learning and natural language processing, okay, so we can now extract insights out of this unstructured data. And that makes a lot of sense here. Why this is relevant and this is important? Well, if you are now, for example, run some analysis in your video, right, to detect some copyright content, so which is what YouTube actually does. Well, you know what you gotta do. Makes ton of sense. These techniques for that. So techniques for data analysis here, like machine learning and natural language processing. In recent past, unstructured data was considered dark data. The challenge of unstructured data, that is, it is volume and lack of uniformity, renders it unusual for many business use cases. Today, however, enterprise with abundant unstructured data possess a significant strategy assets when combined structured and unstructured. And unstructured data provide a complete view of data across the enterprise, and especially relevant in this current moment. Unstructured data can also help business unlock the full potential of generated AI. What are examples of unstructured data? Most unstructured data is textual, email message, Word document, PDF, right? Blogs and social media posts. Text unstructured data also encompass call transcript and message text file, such as those from Microsoft Teams or Slack. So, however, unstructured data can also be non-textual. A common example is image and videos, audios, all right, mobility activity, sensor data from Internet of Things. That's interesting, right? That's a very interesting. Most unstructured data is textual, and there are others that are non-textual. So unstructured versus structured versus semi-structured data. So structured data is like they have a predefined schema that you know the shape of this data. So for example, JSONs, relational database, right? Column in a spreadsheet, right? Examples include phone numbers, SEO tags, and customer data. Unstructured data is data that doesn't have any well-defined shape, right? So video, video, audio, or PDF, or blogs, or content posts, social content, and semi-structured data. Oh, okay. Does not have a predefined schema but has metadata such as tag and semantic markers. Does not conform to the rigid structure of a traditional relational database. So examples are like JSON, CSV, and extensible markup language. This kind of data, when you want to work with them, they have a specific way to do so. But at least they have certain metadata or structure of how to do so. That's quite interesting, right? But this is not what today's video is all about. So generative AI relies on deep learning models that identify and encode the patterns and relationship in huge amount of data. Unstructured data, usually from the internet, is well suited to provide the extremely high volume of rich, unlabeled data necessary for training. Retrieve augmented generation. Retrieval augmented generation is an architecture for optimizing the performance of Gen AI models. Uh-huh. Okay, performance in terms of what and how much, how fast does this process this unstructured data for patterns and generate that? It access to additional external knowledge base. Okay, by giving it access to additional external knowledge base, such as an organization's internal unstructured data. This process helps adapt models to domain specific use cases so they can provide better answers. Customer behavior and sentiment analysis. Exactly. Mm-hmm. This is what use cases of unstructured data. Mm-hmm. You want to collect data from this vast, large posts and their sentiments to, well, sell them something. Predictive data analytics. Again, specific companies that based on the company data is going to collect that and forecast here. So whether it's on the real estate, healthcare, mm-hmm, and chatbot text analysis. Okay. Is to improve the performance of Gen AI model by giving access to additional external knowledge bases. So in any case, the today's video was talk about is this type of instance, which I do find that is quite important to describe here like this. And again, this will set the foundation of what your EC2 is all about. So this is why is this EC2 good for? What is the responsibility? So what is the responsibility for this EC2, right? So that means is you have now several type of instances. So as I mentioned before, general purpose, right? You have that start from T, right? The compute optimized. Hey, I need to actually have a server that allow me to do some heavy intense task operations, processing unstructured data, for example. So media transcoding, or have a dedicated gaming server, or a high performance web server. What is the other? Or I need to run some data analysis and machine learning applications. Is another one, right? For that, or to run some scientific models. The other is for memory optimize, where I need to do some heavy tasks but with memory, right? So whether it is I do need to have a distributed web server, a distributed caching web server, or 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 I need to host is a in-memory database, as they like to call here, or application for processing interesting, or application for processing real-time data of unstructured data, or real-time, yeah, Jesus, blah, blah, what am I saying? So applications that need to process real-time data of unprocessed data sets. So for example, it's like, hey, incoming audio or incoming videos, right? Where this unstructured data is usually huge, right? We're talking about now terabytes or petabytes. Okay. Hmm. So memory optimize here, and let's see you with memory. You want us to now not only have a compute but also optimize. So to process is or to run some machine learning models that are capable to extract insight of this um, unstructured data sets. So AKA, um, yeah, yeah. So AKA, um, what am I going to say? So you have these two instances. One of them is compute optimized and the other is memory optimized. So for compute instance, you say, hey, I do need to run some machine learning application here, and then uh, uh, have all of them and process all of this unstructured data and store them close to the processing unit on the RAM, right? So it makes a ton of sense to have this compute optimized or memory optimized, particularly the memory optimized, to run this um, real-time data or real-time processing on unstructured data sets, right? That's starting to close the gap here. The other is a storage optimize, where here you want to now run is um, high workloads or any task mm, mm, on storage optimize. So any task that needs to any high intense read and write operations in your hard drive or any SSD, right? And that is usually running OLTP or OLAP. Okay. So high frequency online transactions. When you do want to now store structure data on your relational or non-relational database, okay, um, cache for in-memory database, for example, Redis, okay, and data warehouse applications or distribute file system. So once you okay, so this kind of EC2 instance, storage EC2 instance are for when you do wants to store unstructured data. You use that as a file system. You use that as a file system, or to host now a relational or non-relational database. Mm-hmm. Uh, or for high performance or lab operations. All right. Mm-hmm. Okay, high performance or lab operations. Um, in data warehousing applications. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Good. All right. Makes a ton of sense. Make a ton of sense. And then I look at part of the anatomy of the EC2, which is, hey, how do I now is I'll be right back. All right. Okay. All right. So, okay, this is the EC2 instance. All right. Uh, and then, well, how you can now enable the firewall via the security groups. These security groups now are per EC2 instance, per regions. This is great because you don't have to manage, you don't have to think in terms of IP address. All right, you just only think on in terms of these security groups that will manage the inbound and outbound traffic. So by default, all inbound traffic are prohibited, and all outbound traffic are allowed. So that's very interesting, right? Then you have these security groups that again you can now attach to several EC2 instances in that region. All right. You can have access through your EC2 instance via SSH access, which is, well, the next things to know. And what are the most common ports here, right? So whether it's a secure shell via 22 or file FTP, which is port 21, 22 is also it's interesting. 22 is used for SSH, and SFTP is the same. The port 80 for HTTP, the 443 for HTTPS, and for access to remote desktop on Windows is 3309. A quick overview of the SSH, which is something that I'm not going to dive deep too much, and how to set your SSH Emacs and yada yada, and how you can add the identity file to SSH, and then provide is the IP you wanna connect, and finally, all right, and finally, is and finally is another thing called EC2 Instance Connect, which is you can connect to your instance via web terminal. Provide one of these AWS services. EC2 Instance Connect makes a lot of sense. EC2 Instance Role demo, and EC2 Instance, and here we go. Okay, this is what I want to talk about.
Okay, so let's practice using IAM roles for our EC2 instance. So at first, let's connect right here, and we are in our EC2 instance. So as we can see, we are EC2 user at and the private IP. So regardless if you're using EC2 Instance Connect or SSH through your terminal or whatever third party, then if you see this, we are at the same state, okay? So now you can just do some Linux commands, for example, ping Google, and you can get some information out of Google, and I will do Control-C to go out of it, or issue any kind of Linux commands you want, okay? You don't need to know Linux command going to the exam, but this is just a Linux terminal available to you right now in the cloud. So we'll tap clear to clear the screen, and next just a Linux terminal available to you right now in the cloud. So we'll tap clear, and you don't need to know Linux command going to the exam, but this is just a Linux terminal available to you right now in the cloud. So we'll tap clear to clear the screen, and next we have to run some IAM commands. So the cool thing is that the Amazon Linux 2 AMI we're using right now comes with the AWS CLI. And so as you can see, it is installed. So what we can do is start using some commands. For example, AWS IAM list users. And if we do so, it says unable to look at credentials. You can configure credentials by using AWS configure. So we could indeed run AWS configure to configure the credentials and specify an access ID, a secret access key, and a region name. But this is a really bad idea. And the reason is that if we run AWS configure and enter our personal details onto this EC2 instance, then anyone else in our accounts could again connect to our EC2 instance, for example, using EC2 Instance Connect, and retrieve the value of these credentials in our instance, which is not what we want. This is something that's really bad. And so, as a rule of thumb, never ever enter your IAM API key, so the access key ID and the secret access key, into an EC2 instance. This is horrible, and if you see someone doing it, please show them this video. Instead, what we have to do is use IAM roles. So video, EC2 value of these credentials in our instance, which is not what we want. This is something that's really, really bad. And so, as a rule of thumb, never, ever, ever enter your IAM API key, so the access key ID and the secret access key, into an EC2 instance. This is horrible, and if you see someone doing it, please show them this video. Instead, what we have to do is use IAM roles. So if you remember, when we were in the management console and we were in IAM, we had created an IAM role. So let's go back into the roles. We had this demo role for EC2 that had one policy attached called IAM read-only access. So we are going to attach this role onto our EC2 instance to provide it with credentials. Okay, so how do we do this? For this, we can go into security, and as you can see, there is no IAM role right now onto our instance. So what we can do is go back to our instances, action, security, and then modify IAM role. Here we have to choose an IAM role. So we have demo role for EC2, and click on save to attach this IAM role into our instance. So if we go, we have modify IAM role. Here we have to choose an IAM role. So we have demo role for EC2, and click on save to attach. There is no IAM role right now onto our instance. So what we can do is go back to our instances, action, IAM. We had created an IAM role. So let's go back into the roles. We had this demo role for EC2 that had one policy attached called IAM read-only access. So we are going to attach this role onto our EC2 instance to provide it with credentials. Okay, so how do we do this? For this, we can go into security, and as you can see, there is no IAM role right now onto our instance. So what we can do is go back to our instances, action, security, and then modify IAM role. Here we have to choose an IAM role. So we have demo role for EC2, and click on save to attach this IAM role into our instance. So if we go back to security, now the IAM role attached to our instance is demo role for EC2. So the effect of this is that now, if we do AWS IAM list users and press enter, well, we are getting a response around the users from IAM. So as you can see, we did not run the command AWS configure, we just attached an IAM role and ran this command, and it worked. And as a proof, if we go into this role and detach this permission, so now it's gone, and run the command again, we're getting an access denied. So the role is really linked now to the EC2 instance, and this is how we provide AWS credentials to our EC2 instances, only through IAM roles, okay? So if we go back to IAM and we attach a policy to this role and go back to IAM read-only access, attach this policy, and then rerun the command, we get an access denied because sometimes it can take a little bit of time to propagate the changes from IAM into AWS, but if we run it one more time, we're getting the output we expect, which is what we want. So this is very important for you to understand this. Use IAM roles for your EC2 instances. So this is hopefully good for you. I hope you like this hands-on, and I will see you
use
in the next
EC2
lecture.
instance for use IAM roles for EC2 instances.
Hi, and welcome to this lecture on
Exactly. And now the EC2
instances
instance purchasing options.
So we've been using so far on-demand EC2 instances. They allow us to run instances on demand. That means they're good for short workloads. We get predictable pricing, and we're going to pay by the second. But if you have different kind of workloads, you can optimize your discounts and your pricing by specifying it to AWS. For example, you can use reserved instances, and you have 1 year or 3 years term, and they're meant for long workloads. So if you know you're going to run a database for a long time, then a reserved instance is great. And if you want to have a flexible instance type, so for example, you want to change the instance type over time, then convertible reserved instances are for you. And by the way, don't worry, I'm going to do a deep dive in all of those over time. Okay, next we have savings plan. And savings plan are 1 and 3 years term, and they're more modern because instead of committing to a specific instance type, you commit to a specific amount of usage in dollars, and they're again for long workloads. Spot instances instead are meant for very short workloads. They're very, very cheap. but at any time you can lose these instances, and that makes them less reliable. Dedicated host allows you to book an entire physical server and control instance placements, and dedicated instances means that no other customers will share your hardware. Finally, capacity reservations allow you to reserve capacity in a specific AZ for any duration. Now let's look at EC2 on demand. So you're going to pay for what you use, any duration, and the dedicated instead, and do a deep dive in all of those over time. Okay, next we have savings plan, and savings plan are 1 and 3 years term, and they're more modern because instead of committing to a specific instance type, you commit to a specific amount of usage in dollars, and they're again for long workloads. Spot instances instead are meant for very short workloads. They're very, very cheap, but at any time you can lose these instances, and that makes them less reliable. Dedicated host allows you to book an entire physical server and control instance placements, and dedicated instances means that no other customers will share your hardware.
Okay. 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 On demand, predictable short workload, pay per second. Saving plan. 1 to 3 years. Committed to an amount of usage. Long workload. Exactly. Commitment or commit exactly. Commitment to an amount of usage and long workload. Then you have a spot instance. So short workloads, cheap, and can lose instance. So short workload, it is cheap and you can lose that, can lose instance, and can lose instance. Then you have dedicated host and dedicated instance. Okay, the dedicated host is the physical server. So okay, dedicated host is the physical server. Okay. So book an entire physical servers, control instance placement. Book an entire physical server, makes a ton of sense. Control instance placement. Control instance placement. And dedicate instance is that no other customer will share your hardware. And dedicate instance is that no other client will share your hardware. Okay, and then you have capacity reservations. Reservations. Okay, reserve capacity in a specific availability zone for any duration. Reserve capacity in a specific location for any duration. But this is the instance purchasing options. Okay. Makes a ton of sense. Makes a ton of sense. Alright. Okay.
Finally, capacity reservations allow you to reserve capacity in a specific AZ for any duration. Now let's look at EC2 on demand. So you're going to pay for what you use. So that means that if you're using Linux or Windows, you're going to be getting a billing per second
So pay.
after the first minute, or for all the other operating systems, you're going to get a billing per hour. It has the highest cost, but no upfront payments and no long-term commitment. That means it's definitely recommended for a short-term and uninterrupted workload where you cannot predict how the application will behave. Now for reserved instances, and by the way, the numbers I showed you can change over time, so I will not update this video at Linux or Windows where you cannot predict how the application will behave. Now for reserved instances, and by the way, the numbers I showed you can change over time, so I will not update this video every time, but it gives you an idea of what the numbers can
Exactly.
be.
So on the EC2 on demand is that, hey, when the workload is unreliable, there's no pay up front,
attributes, for example,
but it's the most
type,
expensive.
the region,
How
the
much?
tenancy, and the OS.
Don't
You
know.
specify a reservation period, 1 year or 3 years, to get even more discounts, and whether or not you want to pay upfront,
And
partially
EC2
upfront,
reserve
or
instance.
not upfront. And all upfront, of course,
Exactly. You
the
can now
maximum
decide
amount of
when you
discounts.
want to pay
In terms
this
of the
upfront
scope,
or
you want the
no.
scope to be into a specific region or a zone. That means reserved
The
capacity
reversal
in a
instance
specific
scope.
AZ. And so you would use reserved instances for the steady state usage applications, for example, for a database. And you can buy or sell your reserved instances in the marketplace if you don't need them anymore. And there is a specific kind of reserved instances called the convertible reserved instance, which is allowing you to change the instance type, the instance family, the operating system, the scope, and the tenancy. And because you have more flexibility, when you get a bit less discount, you get up to 66% discount.
Okay.
So that's for reserved instances.
You have EC2 instance. It's like, hey, make your mind. Okay. EC2 reserve instance is like, make your mind, because it'll be much more. So they want is to something that is reliable. And life doesn't work that way. Life doesn't work that way. But in any case, it's reserve instances. Reserve instances. They want the client. Okay. They want the client to make their mind on their business or this instance, what they are processing here. Oh my God. Yeah. Amazon have the internet grabbed by their ball.
Up to 66% discounts. So that's for reserved instances. And now you have the EC2 savings plan, which is to allow you to get a discount based on long-term usage, which is the same 70% as reserved instances. But instead, you're going to say, I want to spend $10 per hour for the next 1, 2, 3 years. And any usage beyond the savings plan is going to be billed at the on-demand price. So with savings plans, you're locked to a specific instance family and region. For example, you say, I want to have M5 type of instance family in US East 1. But you're flexible across the instance size, so you can have M5 X large, M5 2X large, and so on. The OS, so you can switch between Linux and Windows and so on. And the tenancy, you can switch between host, dedicated, and default. Now for spot instances, they have the most aggressive discounts, so up to 90% discounts compared to on-demand. But they are instances you can lose at any point of time because you define a max price you're willing to pay for your spot instances. And if the the tenancy consent
or saving plan
to pay for your spot instances, and if the spot price goes over it, then you're going to lose it. So they're the most cost-efficient instances in AWS, and they're going to be very helpful if you have a workload that is resilient to failure. So what could they be? Well, it could be batch jobs, data analysis, image processing, any kind of
resilience to
workload,
failure,
or workloads that have a flexible start and end time. They're not suited for critical jobs or databases, and the exam will test you on that. Next, we have dedicated hosts, so you get or databases, and the exam will test you on that. Suited for critical jobs or databases, and the exam will test you on that. not suited for critical jobs or databases, and the exam will test you on that.
Okay. Hmm. Hmm. EC2 spot instance. Right? So has the most aggressive discount, all right? But you can lose at any point of time if your max price is less than the current spot price. If your max price is less than the current spot price, the most cost efficient and it is useful for workloads that are resilient to failure. So batch jobs, data analysis, image processing, any distributed workload with a flexible start and end time, and not suitable for critical jobs or database. Mm-hmm.
Next, we have dedicated hosts, so you get an actual
Yeah,
physical
your
server
actual physical
with EC2
server.
instances capacity
Okay.
fully dedicated to your use case. And you want to have the dedicated host existing per socket access. You're going to use by per second, or you can reserve them for 1 or 3 years. They're the most expensive option of AWS because you actually reserve a physical server. And so again, a use case is when you have a license, a software that comes with a licensing model that is bring your own license, or if you have a company that has strong regulatory or compliance needs. We also have a company with a licensing model that is bring your own license, or if you have a company that has strong regulatory or compliance needs. We also have dedicated instances, and they're instances that runs on the hardware that's dedicated to you, which is different from the physical server.
Exactly.
But you may share the hardware with other instances in the same accounts, and you have no control over instance placements. So there's a difference between dedicated instances and hosts. That is here. At the exam, honestly, it doesn't trick you into one or the other. But remember that dedicated instances mean that you have your own instance on your own hardware, whereas dedicated host, you get access to the physical server itself, and it gives you visibility into the lower level hardware.
So on an EC2 instance,
on your own hardware, whereas dedicated host, you get access to the physical server itself.
Exactly, on a dedicated host.
So there's a software that comes with a licensing model that is bring your own license, or if you have a company that has strong regulatory or compliance needs.
Exactly.
We also have dedicated instances, and they're instances that runs on the hardware that's dedicated to you, which is different from the physical server. But you may share the hardware with other instances in the same accounts, and you have no control over instance placements. So there's a difference between dedicated instances and hosts. That is here. At the exam, honestly, it doesn't trick you into one or the other. But remember that dedicated instances mean that you have your own instance on your own hardware.
Exactly. Dedicated instance is that you have your own servers, your whole physical servers, and your own hardware. What dedicated host is that you don't. So this you have a dedicated physical server, right? And per host billing, and per instance billing, and automatic instance placement. Dedicated instance and dedicated host. A dedicated host when you have a physical server, okay, and dedicated instance is when you're going to share the hardware with other instances in the same account.
Whereas dedicated host, you get access to the physical server itself, and it gives you visibility into the lower level hardware. Next, we have capacity reservations for EC2. So you can reserve on-demand instances in a specific AZ or cancel your reservation at any time, and no billing discounts. The only purpose is to reserve capacity. So if you want to get billing discounts, you need to combine it with regional reserved instances or your savings plan. And you're charged at the on-demand rate whether or not you run instances. So that means that your reserve capacity, you're going to be paid for it, billed for it, and you know for sure that if you want to launch instances, they're going to be available. But if you don't launch them, you're still going to get charged. So they're very suitable for short-term, uninterrupted workloads that need to be in a specific AZ. So it gets difficult to understand that need to be in a specific AZ. So it gets difficult to understand which purchasing option is right for me, especially if you are a beginner. But let me give you a summary. The first one is on demand. So we'll take a resort as an analogy. And with on demand, you have a resort and you come in whenever you like, and whenever you like, you pay the full price. For reserved, well, you like to plan ahead, and you know you're going to stay a very long time in your resort, 1 to 3 years, and then you're going to get a good discount because we know you're going to stay a long time. Savings plan is saying, hey, I know for sure that in my resort I'm going to spend a specific amount, so I'm going to spend maybe $300 per month every month for the next 12 months, and therefore you may want to change your room type over time, so king, suite, sea view, and so on. But the savings plan is saying, hey, you're going to commit to a specific spending in your hotel. Spot instances are whenever the hotel runs a very last minute discounts because they have empty rooms and they want to attract people. So they get empty rooms and people bid on getting this empty room, and so you get very, very discounts. But in this specific resort, well, you can get kicked out at any time if someone is willing to pay more for your room than what you did, okay? But I don't want to stay in such a resort. Dedicated host is saying, hey, I want to book the entire building of the resort, so you get your own hardware, your own resort. And then capacity reservation is saying, I'm going to book a room. I'm not even sure if I don't stay in, but I know that if I want to stay in, I will have it, and you will pay full price for booking that room nonetheless. In terms of price comparison, I've just price for booking that room nonetheless. In terms of price comparison, I've just put together this table to give you one example at one point of time. So I took an M4 large in USD
for one instance,
and the on-demand price is 10 cents, but then the spot price is going to be up to, for example, 61% off in my example. Then if you want to reserve your instance, as you can see, you have different pricing if you wanted to have for 1 year, for 3 years, and pay no upfront or all upfront. Same for the EC2 savings plan. We see that it is the same as the reserved instance discounts. We also get reserved convertible instances, and we have dedicated host, which is at the on-demand price. The dedicated host reservation, which is up to 70% off because you reserve your host, and capacity reservation, again at the on-demand price. So the exam will ask you to just know which type of instance is the right one based on your workloads, and by now you should have some good hints, and don't worry, we will practice this over time. All right, that's it for this lecture. I hope you liked it, and I will see you in the next lecture.
All right. Yep. Okay, good. So that makes a lot of sense of how the things fit into this, right? And that'll be all for this video. Take care. Bye bye.